Today we're going to be taking a look at creating custom PLC styles in AutoCAD Electrical. This is an advanced topic. At D3 we're trying to do more of these webinars based off of small, more advanced topics. So be looking for more of these webinars similar to this coming out in the future. I did just want to kind of give an upfront contract, let you guys know that due to the limited amount of time for the webinar, only 30 minutes today, that we will not be taking questions during the webinar. However, at the end of the webinar, I will have a Q&A session. Down at the bottom of your GoToWebinar panel, there is a chat section. At any time during the webinar, feel free to put a question into the chat window. At the end during the Q&A session, I will come and check the chats for any questions you might have then. If your question requires additional information, we will have your contact information, so any questions you leave with us, we will get back with you via email. So again, just due to the limited amount of time we have today, we will be taking questions at the end, and most questions will be addressed via email after the webinar. All right, so moving on. My name is Thomas Smith. I am a solutions consultant with D3 Technologies. I specialize in controls and electrical designs. I've been with D3 for 5+ years. With D3, I am basically the project manager for all of our electrical services. I primarily handled implementations, custom workflow definition, custom database setup, and libraries, etc. I also do a lot of the AutoCAD electrical training, as well as integrations into Inventor with cable and harness, electromechanical, and Volt as well. Prior to D3, I spent several years in industry as a controls designer out of an engineering firm out of Rose Hill, Kansas, called American Control and Engineering Services. So I have a lot of industry experience as well as the software experience that I've gained with D3 in my time here with implementing and setting up the software for various customers across the country. Here is an opportunity. You can see my email address. I will also be presenting my email address at the end. So, if you see anything that piques your interest, or if you have any questions regarding the workflow that I defined today, please feel free to reach out to me at that email address. Again, I will be displaying that at the end of the webinar. Okay, so today's agenda, what we're going to look at, as mentioned in the title, is we're going to be looking at creating custom PLC styles. In order to do that, we have to look at a couple things. We're going to have to take a good look at actually how parametric PLCs are used within the software. So we're going to look at understanding the modules themselves. We will then move on to creating the actual custom PLC style. We'll look at the naming convention that goes with the library files or the block files for the custom PLC terminals. Then we'll end with creating the image files that are ultimately associated with your style to the project and drawing properties, as well as the insert parametric PLC module. Now, also due to the time limitations that we had on today's webinar, when I am demonstrating my workflow, I captured this in a video just to help reduce any issues that might come up and to save time. So everything is recorded via video. But it was my true steps that you'll see there. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available after this if you need to check out the contents of this webinar again. All right, so that is our agenda. We're going to start by jumping into actually understanding the parametric PLC modules. So parametric PLCs, what make them parametric is that we have the ability, when placing each module, to choose the manufacturer's content. Based off of the manufacturer's part number that we select, it is going to define a certain set of terminal points per the manufacturer's specifications. On top of that, once placing the actual module, once we determine what terminal layouts are going to be used, when we place the module, we have the ability to adjust that module for spacing on an each application basis. So one time we could put it in with spacing a 1/2 inch and then 3/4. And so it's parametric there. We also have some flexibility in as far as what options we're going to define for prompts, rack slot, module number, etc., and defining the tagging format for your I/O points. So these are flexible PLC modules. They are database driven, so there is an access database behind what we're looking at. That is the PLC Access Database. And so, when we specify our manufacturer's information, as I mentioned, it takes, the manufacturer's defined terminal points and then groups them together to grab a module. When we look at the actual PLC module, so what we're going to see down here in the image that you're looking at right here where my cursor is at, this is when you go into the Insert Parametric PLC and you're in the database modification and you select a manufacturer's part number. Every terminal point there, as you can see, has a defined terminal type. And associated with each terminal type for every PLC input or terminal connection for that card is also a block, is what you can see down here in the lower image. So you'll notice that the corresponding terminal type, module info, IO point, wire left, and then down below you see a block name, which is the HP5WA-DL. Also under unique description, we see the module info, IO, wire left. So what I'm explaining is every terminal point that is being utilized in the Parametric PLC module is actually an individual PLC, or is it actually individual PLC block. And so for every terminal point, as you can see in this image up here, I'm previewing 8 terminals. There's also 8 corresponding blocks, or if they're using the same terminal point, then they repeat that. But for every terminal type listed for the PLC module, there is also a unique block that goes with it. So when you are defining the terminal type for each Parametric PLC, you are actually telling the software which block at that exact instance to place for that module. Continuing on with understanding the Parametric PLCs is, as I just talked about, there are several blocks that are associated with these different PLC blocks. There are 5 styles that you're going to get coming out of the box that are predefined, and then there's going to be styles 6 through 9, which are user-defined. For each style, there's roughly about 30 to 40 blocks associated with that PLC style, and that will vary as style. So as you see, each style will have its own group of required blocks, depending on, is the terminal coming from the left, is the terminal coming from the right, is it an IO left, IO right, etc. And so there's about 30 to 40 blocks for each style. The blocks that we're going to be editing are going to be stored in your library location. So if you're utilizing the NFPA library, you will find these files within that library. An example of the files that we're going to be looking for, and I'll show this all in software in a minute, is if I was looking at this file name, HP5W-alpha-DL, that's the one I just previewed in the previous slide. That is the DWG for the module info wire left block. The 5 in that string of text indicates which style it is associated with. So as I mentioned, you get 5 styles for the Parametric PLCs out of the box. What I normally recommend when it comes to creating a custom parametric style, PLC style, is to find a style that already exists that's somewhat similar to the style you're trying to create. You will open the DWG that actually exists for that. So in this case, I will open up the HP5W-alpha-DL.DWG, make my modifications, then perform a save as, and in place of the 5, I will place a 7 for the corresponding style if I'm defining style 7. So that's a little bit of background about the naming convention that goes in it and how they're built. But a little understanding, which some people don't know, and so I want to point it out, is what actually happens when the module is built. So every time you place a card, as I mentioned, every terminal type defined by a manufacturer has a block. So if it is a 20, has 20 terminals on your Parametric PLC, you're going to have 20 individual blocks. When you first create that module based off the manufacturer's selection, it compiles and stacks all the individual terminal representation blocks. It then explodes all the individual blocks, puts a border around them, and recreates the block as a single unit in your current DWG. So that's what happens. The file that you actually get for the module in your DWG has a different name than the actual individual blocks that actually compile it. It is given an arbitrary name once it is created and placed into your schematic. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at all of this happening inside of the software. So this is going to be the process of creating the parametric or the custom PLC style. All right, so I'm just going to go up here. I'm going to be on the schematic tab. The first thing I'm going to take a look at is the PLC database. So I'm going to go to the other tools panel, and I'm going to click on the PLC database file editor. Once the database opens up, you got your manufacturers on the left. You can select your card. Per that defined card, you have a terminal type column, and you got various terminals defined for that connection point. I'm going to come over here and click the settings. And when I go into settings, I can see the terminal block associated for each of these terminal points based off of style. So if I select, style 5, I'll see the 5 in all the block names and the corresponding description. As I switch styles, you'll notice that the number within the block file name changes to represent that style. So again, what I want to do is open up a block that is related to a style that already exists, similar to the style I want to create. So I'm just going through here and just getting a name or a look at the name of the blocks that I'm going to edit for my specific custom module. So I'm going to have the top module info IO point wire left. I'm going to have a terminal point wire left, and then a terminal point wire right. So what I'm doing now is I'm going into the settings, finding the style and the block names for the corresponding terminal type. Once I've got that, I can get a preview by hitting the View DWG box. I'm going to go ahead and leave the database and now actually open up the files that I found within my NFPA library. So I'm in the NFPA library, and I'm going down to look for those block names I just got out of the settings of the database editor. So the first one I'm going to look for is the top module info IO point wire left. What you're going to see is in these DWGs, it's just a little bit of actual geometry and mostly attribute definitions. So what I'm going to change is I do not want the circle in there. In fact, I want a rectangle that is going to contain my terminal number. And this particular PLC style has a terminal connection, but it is a square terminal, and I'm going to switch that square terminal out for a diamond. So I'm just putting in my new geometry on top of any geometry and removing what's in place. You also want to make sure as you adjust the geometry, you make accounts for that in any other thing. Like I just change the length of that line to connect to the end of my rectangle. I'm rotating the square that's in here, the square terminal, to be my diamond shape. Again, I'm just doing some cleanup, moving the wire connection point so it terminates on the end of my diamond quadrant there. So I've made my changes, and now I'm going to go and save this. So I'm going to perform a save as, make sure I'm in my NFPA library defined by my project, and I'm going to find the name, and I simply replace the 5 for a 7 because I am defining a custom style for style 7. Now I'm just going to open up the remaining blocks. The next one I'm going to do is just a IO point wire left. So again, I found these block names by going into the database into the settings section. Same thing I'm going to do here is I opened up the block for style 5. I'm going to adjust the geometry to correspond with my new PLC style. So I'm going to go with the same layout that I did in my previous block. So I'm switching out the circle for a rectangle and the square terminal for a diamond terminal. Again, when you're making adjustments to geometry within these files, make sure to clean up any additional geometry, such as you can see here with my connections, points, and then once I rotate or switch out my square terminal, I have to account for the moving of that wire connection point just to make sure everything lines up and functions appropriately. So I'm just going to do, again, finish my geometry cleanup, and then once I finish that, it is again a process of just going back in, performing a save as. I don't want to save over style 5, so I'm going back in NFPA library, adjusting the name of the block, replacing the 5 for a 7 to define my new style. I got one more block for this particular example. Now remember, I said there's 30 or 40 blocks for each style. I'm only doing an example for this webinar and only defining 3 blocks for style 7. So the particular card that I'm going to demonstrate once this is done, it only utilizes those 3 blocks. If you're going to have variations in your style, then you might have to create, up to 30 or 40 custom symbols depending on your needs. So again, I'm just drawing my geometry, and this one's pretty simple. This one was just a terminal connection point wire left. So I am just going to simply switch out the circle for the rectangle, move the wire connection point, and this one is complete. All right, again, save as and NFPA library or whatever library you happen to be using at that time, and then changing the name of the style to reflect your style number. Okay, so I got all my styles, or all my blocks for my custom style defined at this point. What I'm going to do is go back into the PLC Database Editor. So I'm going to go Schematic tab, Other Tools panel, PLC Database Editor. When this opens, I'm going to create a custom card. So I'm going to go into my D3 Technologies manufacturer. I'm just going to right click here on the IB16 and just create another instance of this. So I'm going to go with, I believe, an isolated card. So I'll go with the 16 or IB16I, put in a little description here. All right, so I'm going to do a DC for my base addressing. I'm going to just specify a hard code decimal in there. That's what we tend to do. When it comes to terminals, you want to account for all terminal connections, just not I/O points. So I have actually 20 terminals and 16 I/O points. For module prompts, I'm just going to have it, kind of go with the system default and change %1 to prompt me for rack and %2 to prompt me for slot. None of that really has to do with the style. I'm just doing that just for some background. So I've defined my new card. In my card, I have, up to 20 terminals. You can see I have 20 terminals, and now it's a matter of going through and defining what's going to happen at each terminal. So I'm going to right-click on this Edit Terminal. Remember, the 3 blocks that I adjusted was a top input, module info, I/O, wire left. So there's the one I modified. The next ones are going to be just my I/O points. So I'm going to right-click, Edit. I'm going to switch to the input category and select my I/O point, wire left. Hit OK. That is going to repeat, so I'm going to copy and paste that down all the way through terminal 8 because my first 8 terminals are going to be I/O connections. Terminals 9 and 10 are going to be my terminal connections just to the common. So I'm going to select the appropriate block for that. I'm going to do the terminal point wire left. I could have taken that right, but in this example I just went left. So again, I'm going to copy and paste that where it's reused. Terminals 9 and 10 and 19 or 20 are connections, are standard terminal connections. Now, once again, I'm going to copy and paste the I/O or input I/O wire left information to the remaining inputs because everything's an input or an input coming from the left for those remaining points. So I'm just going to define that. Now that I have all my terminal types defined, I'm just going to save my module. So everything is good in the database. I've created the new card. I'm going to go ahead and hit done. I could have inserted it from there, but I'm going to go ahead and go back again, Schematic tab, Insert Components panel, and I'm going to do the Insert Parametric PLC. Now when I select it here, there's my new card, but now I'm working with a new style. So I have to be sure to come over to the graphical style, select my new style, and hit OK. Once I do that, I get the standard Parametric PLC information, dialog box, addressing, rack, slot, custom prompts. I'll go ahead and select through it and just throw it in here. But as you can see, once it's placed, it is my customization. I have, the rectangle with the address in the middle and my diamond terminal connection points on the beginning. If I edit this, it is a fully functioning Parametric PLC module. Now, one thing you were going to notice is in that workflow, when I went through, after I created the Parametric PLC and I was going into the Insert Parametric PLC dialog box, when I changed to Style 7, it had no image to display. So there's a second step to creating the styles if you want to represent your custom style visually in your dialog boxes. So step 1 is creating all the necessary blocks to be utilized in the database, and then step 2 is going to be defining your image files. So when it comes to defining a PLC image for your custom styles, you're going to use BMP files, and these are going to be used, again, as I mentioned, in 2 locations. This is to display your style in the project and drawing properties, as you see in this graphic here, and then, in this graphic here. And then also when you're doing the Insert Parametric PLC, you'll see it up in the graphic style. So these are the 2 places that I am creating graphic images to represent my new custom style. Now when it comes to naming these guys have a specific name and location. So for the properties dialog box, again, that is going to be drawing properties and project properties, you will save your BMP file with the name of P_style, the style number, and then orientation. So if we look at here, we got pstylexv.bmp. The X would be the style number, the V would be vertical orientation. So for my style, it'll be P_style7v.bmp. The location at which these are going to be saved is in a programs file location. It is program files, Autodesk, AutoCAD, the year of your software, and then there's an AutoCAD folder under there. One thing you're going to notice that when I do my example is that I, due to IT restrictions, do not have the ability to save into the program files location. So what I'm going to do, and you'll probably have to do as well, depending on your IT setup, is save it to the desktop and then drag and drop it from the desktop into the program files. I have the ability to do that with the IT restrictions that are set up on my machine. So you're going to see me perform that. So I'm going to save it to my desktop and then I'll move it into the location in the program files. So again, that was for the properties, the project and drawing properties, to display it on the Styles tab. For the Insert Parametric PLC dialog box, you're going to remove the P underscore and it'll just be Style X, where again X represents the number of the style, then orientation, in my case B.BMP. So again, mine will be style7v.bmp saved into the same location, again, program files. When it comes to creating these BMPs, I'm going to use just a screen capture software that we have called Snagit. You could use any image capture tool that you have, whether that's the Windows snippet tool, etc. We just need to make sure we get those saved in the format of BMP. So again, I'm going to show an example of this workflow via a video here, and I'll talk over that. So here we go with creating the images. All right, so I'm just going to zoom in on my image the way I want. I'm going to initiate my screen capture software. So again, I'm using a Snagit software. I'm just going to get a nice preview of my module. One thing you want to think about when you're is image size. So I'm going to size my image down so it looks a little more proportional in those dialog boxes. As you can tell, those dialog boxes are small icons. So I just scaled it down, and I'm not too worried about the graphic. I could have made my lines a little lighter, etc. in here. Again, I'm going to save mine to the desktop just due to restrictions, and I'm going p_style7.b.bmp. So this is for the properties. I'm going to use the same image, so I'm going to do another save as, again going to my desktop. This time I'm removing the p underscore to create the one for the Insert Parametric PLC dialog box. All right, so I've got those images created. I'm simply going to come out here now, and I'm performing a drag and drop. So I got my desktop location, and then over here I'm going to go C, again, program files. Once I'm in program files, Autodesk, then AutoCAD year, and under AutoCAD there's an AutoCAD, which is AutoCAD Electrical, and then from there I'm just going to drag and drop. So here you're going to see, because of the location, it's going to prompt me for some permissions. So I'll just drag and drop both these guys over, again giving permission to both due to restrictions on my machine. But they now reside in the location in which they should, so I'll close these dialog boxes. We'll come back into the software and see if my custom images come up. All right, so I'm actually going to go into the properties, right-click on my project, properties. I'm going to go to the Styles tab. So if I select Style 7, it's very faded there, but that is my image. It's no longer prompting you for the just the text that you would see there, style7.bmp. So there is, image file is there. Again, the only thing that I could have probably done is change the line weights or, what colors to be brighter in that image, but just for time's sake, I was just trying to capture the workflow. So that is the steps of creating custom PLC styles. We must first define the blocks for each terminal type that we would like to utilize in the style. We do that by naming them and saving them in our library location. We take something that's existing, such as a style for, we'll say PLC style 5. We open the block associated with the terminal type, make our adjustments, perform a save as, remove the number that references to the old style, replace it with your new style number, and then save it in the library location. And you will have a fully functional custom PLC style. All right, so at this time, as I mentioned, we got about 5 minutes left of this, so I was going to open it up through the chat window if anybody had any questions at this time. I'll leave it just for a few minutes, see if the questions come in via chat. If not, I'll move forward with a few ending notes that we have as well. All right. right, and again, I just want to remind everybody that this webinar is being recorded, so we will have that available on our website after this webinar terminates. So if you would like to review that information, or if you have any additional questions, regarding the workflow, again, this was just a preview over the concept of creating custom PLC styles. So I'm sure there might be some questions when you actually get into it, and you guys can. Again, I'll preview my email at the end of this, and you can reach out to me or the D3 support team anytime with questions that you might have after the fact. All right, so look, I didn't get any questions coming through. Again, I'll put my email address at the end so you can facilitate the questions via email after the webinar. One thing I want to just go over real quick is a few of the electrical services that D3 offers. We've been revamping our electrical offerings, and so I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of what we now offer when it comes to electrical. We offer implementation services, so that's setting it up to completely work within your environment with your restrictions, your properties, everything that you need to fully function in the software with workflow definitions. We network electrical so that all the content is pushed out into a network location so all users have access to that. We also do adoption. We can do custom workflow definition, database migration, block and library creation, and then project mentoring with that. And then we always have our training offerings, both public. We do offer, a lot of people don't know, we do have advanced classes. So we have our standard level 1 and level 2, and then we have a public advanced class. And then we also offer private custom training centered around anything that your company is trying to accomplish. So those are our offerings when it comes to electrical. We're always brainstorming of ways to make it better. So if you guys have any ideas or you guys are in need of something, please feel free to reach out to our team, and we will be happy to get on that and work with you to find a solution. So again, I want to thank everybody for taking time today. I know coming off after a holiday is always tough, but thank you for jumping on the webinar. If you guys have any questions, you got my email address there at the top, so it is thomas.smith@d3tech.net. I also provided the email address of Erin Hurd. She's a sales representative that can assist you with any questions as well or facilitate those to me. So again, guys, I appreciate your time. Be looking for more, advanced topic webinars coming in the near future. So this is something we continue, we want to continue to do, and the more interest we get, the more likely to continue to happen. So you guys all enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. And again, thank you for your time.